Existence. Why do patterns exist? Why should the universe contain any regularities at all? From our observations and engineering, we know that the laws of physics, gravity, electromagnetism, and quantum mechanics are regular and universal, but why should this be? We know from experimentation that all electrons are the same, all protons are the same, and all neutrons are the same, but why should any two subatomic particles share the same properties and features? Why is it that we can generalize, categorize, or name anything at all? For a patternist, there are no answers to why. For a patternist, patterns are an inherent property of the universe in the same way that space, time, and matter are inherent properties. Asking why the universe contains such regularities and allows them to form is difficult, if not impossible, to answer. Instead, patternists focus on what can be built from these regularities, starting with regularities and aiming to lay the philosophical foundation of patternism. We begin by defining existence in terms of patterns, with the intent to account for all biological phenomena in a practical framework. Exist as what? For anything to exist, it must have a form, a set of features that display regularity, and be able to maintain that form for some time. For example, a species is defined by genetic patterns consistently found within its population. A nation is defined by its geography, values, language, dress, and institutions. A border is marked by physical barriers. The President of the United States has a set of features, like being elected and residing in the White House. Nitrogen has a specific number of protons, atomic weight, and characteristic reactions. An individual has a name and defining attributes like height and eye color on a government-issued ID. To exist means to exist as a pattern, as a set of regularities. Object permanence refers to the regularity with which an entity exists in time and space. Both time, moment to moment, and space, position, location, are features that can be used to describe an entity. Regular in time and regular in space, continuous in time and continuous in space. Objects do not simply appear, vanish, and then reappear again. They don't teleport around. They evolve through time and space. When we park our car, we expect our car to remain in the same spot when we return. If our car disappears, we are alarmed. The same reaction occurs when we watch a magic trick, such as a magician making a coin disappear in one hand and reappear in the other. It captures our attention and surprises us when our sense of object permanence is violated. If objects teleport or vanish suddenly, we feel something is wrong, that a trick is being played, and we instinctively search for the cause of the violation, especially if it occurs within our sight. Object permanence must be viewed in terms of patterns. By understanding permanence as patterns, we can use the tools of pattern recognition, prediction, repetition, natural selection, and categorization to observe and describe the permanence of an entity as well as the features of its existence. Conversely, object impermanence is the recognition that entities do change, evolve, or disappear over long periods of time. It is the recognition that nothing remains constant forever, especially over extended intervals. The balance between permanence and impermanence drives the need to learn. Intelligence is active, not static. For a patternist, intelligence is the ability to find and exploit patterns. In the divide between object permanence and impermanence lies the necessity for intelligence, to learn the extent to which an entity exists, to discard what is no longer useful, and to learn again. Things change and evolve over time. If we identify a pattern, we must constantly update the pattern. We must remain aware and adaptable, knowing that things are regular, but only to a certain degree and for a limited time. Zebras must learn the seasonal permanence of watering holes. Ants must learn about the location of food, which then disappears, requiring the ants to search again. Bees must find flower patches, communicate their locations, and then move on once resources are depleted. Within this balance lies the complexity of existence. How consistent is an entity? Is it regular enough to take advantage of? Where does it exist, and for how long? What are the features of a pattern, and to what degree is it regular? It is within this balance between permanence and impermanence that the need arises to find patterns and use them before they disappear. Exist relative to what? The extent and duration of an entity's existence can range from objective to subjective. The objective view is evolutionary, where regularity and duration are shaped solely by natural selection. In contrast, the subjective view depends on another entity, such as an agent, which is defined as anything that can act. Our concern is how an agent detects and perceives the existence of objects. In the most fundamental sense, an entity exists relative to an agent, whether enzyme, bacterium, virus, dog, or human, if the agent can use the entity to differentiate its actions in a consistent manner. For example, a host cell exists relative to a virus because the virus can detect the host cell using proteins on its capsid shell, prompting the virus to inject its genetic material. A dog can detect scents that humans cannot. Astronomers did not know that the planet Pluto existed until disturbances in Neptune's orbit were observed. Entities exist for an agent if they can be sensed and detected. The more regular and predictable an entity is, the more confident an agent becomes in its existence, even if indirectly perceived through representations or instruments. For a patternist, all that exists are patterns. Questions like what is real or what is not real are irrelevant. The only question that matters is how regular is it? Is it regular enough to be reproducible for engineering and thus be called a solution? Is it regular enough to serve as a principle for a theory? Is it regular enough to create representations and make predictions? Is it regular enough for an individual or a population to rely on for survival? Although both views, a separate objective reality and a relative subjective reality, can be argued for from a patternist perspective, our practical framework assumes an objective reality where patterns exist. However, in the process of identifying and storing these patterns, a subjective reality is formed and inhabited. In other words, there is an external universe containing various patterns. A subset of these patterns is recognized and stored by an agent using representations. The representations then become the agent's subjective reality, an internal man-made reality that can be inaccurate and prone to errors. In this framework, the human brain serves as the filter between external reality and the internal reality of perception. Thus, all we truly have access to are representations of reality. When our representations are accurate and align well with external reality, we can navigate the world effectively and make accurate predictions. When our representations are wrong, we stumble, make errors, and experience cognitive dissonance. We encounter illusions, hallucinations, bias, and other distortions. The patternist view of existence as a set of patterns plays a central role in defining the self. The use of the word I is a representation of the self through language. Anything that can be represented, categorized, labeled, and used consistently to a practical degree is a pattern. Therefore, I, the self, is a pattern. For a patternist, the effective use of the word I proves self-existence. But this does not mean that only agents capable of using language to self-identify have a sense of self. Instead, the self exists on a spectrum of increasing complexity, from self-differentiation to accurate self-description and the ability to predict and control one's actions. In line with Descartes' Cogito ergo sum, for a patternist, I am a pattern, I am an evolving pattern. I choose what I evolve into. Therefore, I am free.